All right, we are back here on the Waiting All Day for Sunday Night podcast. I'm your host, Chase Younts, and I'm joined alongside my co-host, Alex Frank. We've got us in the building here, and I'm at Younts Chase 32 on. You got Frankie_Natty on Twitter. I remembered that correctly, but hey, we're back at it again. Alex, how you doing today?
Chase, I'm doing great, even as Trey Hendrickson is ripping the Bengals front office to shreds on national television. You have people saying it's Andrew Whitworth all over again, and even though we've paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, I'm starting to now be in the camp of, yeah, but you did it too late, and now look what's happening.
The Bengals episode might go platinum here, but that's another episode. It's
When you slack on one side of the ball, it has an impact on the entire team and apparently organization as well.
Oh, it definitely does. And yeah, it's hard to not block out the noise being around here in the Southwest Ohio area. But again, other than that, are you doing well?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Let's see. We've got Sunday Night Football's 20th season coming up. My marketing ploys or marketing schemes, if you will, for my mock schedule are changing as we speak, but that's okay. And I'm learning the importance of the importance of having a top-notch game producer on a television show, which at the end of the day, Sunday Night Football is. It just so happens to be the most successful television show maybe ever.
In the sports world,
Mash would like a word with you on that.
Oh, 100%. And I, you know what? That actually sets up perfectly. I'll give you the floor right now, Alex, for your opening monologue that will have our eyes popping.
It'll have your eyes popping, that is for sure. Maybe Fragedeli's will as well. So, throughout life, I've been mesmerized by the connection between sports and music. Okay, so Sunday Night Football is entering its 20th season, a season where they will culminate by broadcasting Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara, technically San Francisco, but Santa Clara. And part of what makes Sunday Night Football so great is the on-air talent, play-by-play announcer, Al Michaels to Mike Tirico, and the producer from Fragedeli to Rob Hyland. Well, there's a connection, sports and music. Do you happen to know which famous band is from San Francisco?
Enlighten me.
They were the band that back in 1981 told you and are still telling you to this day to don't stop believing.
Oh. There we go.
So the great band Journey changed lead singers about 20 years ago-ish from Steve Perry to Arnel Pineda. And just like Sunday Night Football changed play-by-play announcers and Mike Tirico seemingly just keeps getting better and better and better, the same is true for Journey's lead singer. So naturally, the two things are interwoven together, right? Sunday Night Football and Journey have both had two incredible play-by-play announcers and game producers, and so for Sunday Night Football's 20th season and Super Bowl 60, it just is meant to be that it's in San Francisco, in the Bay Area. Not to mention, one of Journey's former bass guitar players, Randy Jackson. You know what show he used to be a judge on?
No.
He used to be a judge on American Idol. Well, guess who's the judge on American Idol now?
Carrie
Underwood. Wonder where we've seen her before. And when Sunday Night Football became Primetime's #1 show, guess what show it supplanted from that status?
I wonder.
American Idol. The connections that we're making here are just otherworldly. For sports and music, and Sunday Night Football is still Primetime's #1 show.
It's been running and it's been going, man. SNF. We love it, and we love it so much that we're literally going to continue our choosing the best Sunday Night Football game from each season since 2015. That's just me reading the title of this video.
I've been waiting all week for this.
Oh, we gotta, yeah. I mean, you think about it.
Can I say one thing really quick? And I texted you this on Sunday.
Yeah, it's here.
So that Colts-Chargers game that I was referencing in 2007 with how crazy it was, Peyton Manning throwing 6 picks.
Yeah.
What if I told you that 2 of them never should have been thrown?
You were saying this, but I don't
know
know
how crazy that game was. Okay, here's the Cliff Notes version. Okay, now feel free to go back and watch the game in its entirety on YouTube.
Before you go into this, if you are watching 6.5 minutes into this, or however many minutes into this one you are, if you're watching this far in, I'm telling you, go back and watch old SNF games because you'll be like, oh, I remember what I was doing back in around that time frame. I was like 4, I was like 5, I was 10 years old. Like, you know what I'm saying? Referencing. Continue.
Referencing. Okay. So Darren Sproles started that game with an opening kickoff with a kickoff return for a touchdown. The Chargers go up 16-0. It's getting out of hand quickly.
Yep.
Okay, so Rivers throws a pick I think late in the first quarter. And if he doesn't throw that pick, the game is probably over. Okay. So the Chargers, Rivers throws a pick. The Colts return it all the way to like the Chargers' 5-yard line. But there was an inadvertent whistle in the end zone all the way back at the other end zone on the interception because they thought it was incomplete. Here's what happened. The ball kicked off of former Colts linebacker Gary Brackett.
I remember this.
And if I remember correctly, it was Cato June who had the interception. I could be wrong, so don't quote me. I'll have to fact check this as a responsible journalist. So naturally, the Colts then have to start with the touchback. Guess how their next possession ends? An interception. Antonio Cromartie.
Oh, people remember that one.
It was his right hand going back this way, okay? So that's how one of the interceptions was thrown that shouldn't have been thrown. The game ends. The Colts are driving. They're trailing 23-21. The Chargers haven't scored, by the way, since early in the second quarter. And the Colts pick up a first down where they can just seemingly run out the clock. Joseph Adai picks up the first down. But then someone upstairs claims to think that he didn't get the first down. So they review the play. And sure enough, when he lands, the ball is not at the first down marker, even though I think it clearly was. I watched that part of the game. No big deal, right? I'd have been a Terry 29-yard field goal for the win.
You would think.
Shanks it. Wide right. Second miss of the night. Chargers win 23-21. Al Michaels said it's the greatest escape since Charles Bronson.
I remember that. And you talk about Al Michaels and wide right. He knows a thing or two about that one. Sorry, Buffalo.
What a hole.
Ooh.
And that Gene Steratore in officiating controversy on Sunday Night Football. He knows a thing or two about that.
He does. And that's why you always bring one of these with you. So,
oh, my God.
There we go.
I don't even know what to say to that.
References, man. References. Top tier, you know?
Yes.
All around. Both of us. Both sides of the screen. But let's get into this last half, the second half, if you would, of the Sunday Night Football games, the best one from each season since 2015. So, again, in 2015, I'm going to start this one off here, Alex.
Okay.
I was going back and forth between one of these two games that involved the same team. And you know who that team is?
The same team.
They played back-to-back SNF games. That might be too big of a hint for you.
Back-to-back SNF games. Is it who I'm thinking it is? Is it the Minnesota Vikings?
That is a very good guess, but it is actually not them. It is the Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, you're going to bring up one of the most heartbreaking losses of that era of Bengals football.
I'm actually not going to bring up that one. I'm actually going to bring up the Arizona-Seattle game.
One of the forgotten games of Sunday Night Football.
One of the great forgotten games of Sunday Night Football, because the one thing that I truly remember from this was Drew Stanton on the sideline after a touchdown, and he's just like swinging his arm up and down, and he's loving what's happening with Arizona. But this, how I would caption this one, I kind of caption all of these games in like 10 words or less. We realized Arizona was the real deal that night.
Yes, we did.
We realized it. And I believe they moved to 7-2. And then the following week, they played the Bengals, who were 8-1 coming off the Monday Night Football loss against the Texans. But we realized the Arizona Cardinals were that good, that Carson Palmer still had it. Larry Fitzgerald is Larry Legend. Guys like Michael Floyd, John Brown, Jerron Brown, they were stepping up.
David Johnson, the running back.
Yes. David Johnson, Chris Johnson was still back there as well. Like, they had a lot of great pieces on that team, and that's when the national attention really came to Arizona, and they were able to win that game and got a flex game the next week against the Bengals.
They won that game in Seattle. Seattle was 4-4. They were starting to come around. It was a road game. The Cardinals struggled mightily in Seattle prior to that game, and Carson Palmer just picked the Legion of Boom apart. Terrific performance. That's a good poll from the archives there. Part of Sunday Night Football lore and postseason lore is the Hail Larry. The divisional round game, the Packers and the Cardinals, and I think Chris Collinsworth to this day thinks pizzas flip more than a coin. So, there is that for you. Man, what a great game that was. But I'm not going with that game.
Okay.
You see, there's no guarantees in football, Chase. And if you need any proof, just ask anybody who's kicked a playoff field goal for the Minnesota Vikings.
Well, that's a tough one, Blair Walsh.
You see, one of the most enduring images of Sunday Night Football on NBC is Mike Zimmer, literally with his hands on his knees and his head down, after Blair Walsh misses how long of a field goal was it, Chase? 27 yards.
27, yep.
How in the world does he miss it? And he doesn't just miss it. He misses it. Did it hit the net behind the goalposts?
I don't know, but you think about it, Alex. You're talking about one of the most unique Sunday Night Football moments in the playoffs happened in a day game in one of the oldest playoff games in history.
It was the first time that NBC had broadcasted a day game in the playoffs, if my memory serves me correct. That I should say the lead Sunday Night Football on NBC team
on a Sunday.
On a Sunday.
Sunday day game.
Let me make sure I'm getting this factually correct here, because they had some 4:30 playoff games in 06, 07, 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, but once ESPN joined the fray, you had 4 different networks broadcasting a playoff game back when there was only 4 playoff games on Super Wildcard, or then it was just Wildcard weekend. Yeah. So it was a rare day game. It was cold as hell, literally.
Yeah.
Bud Grant comes out for the coin toss, and he's sleeveless. he's
polo shirt. That was insane.
And he's 90 years old. I think over 90 years old.
That guy was a unit.
How did Minnesota lose that game?
I don't know.
You had Russell Wilson in that crazy, run backwards and then make as only Russell Wilson could. And there was, and speaking of the Packers-Cardinals game, because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that game, because it's one of the greatest playoff games in NFL history. There was a Drew Esikoff cut to a shot. I think they were coming out of a commercial break that game. They come back, and there's a Vikings fan in the stands wearing a Randy Moss jersey that says, "I bought tickets to this game."
Oh, my gosh.
Because if Minnesota had beaten Seattle, which they should have, they would have played at Arizona, and Green Bay would have gone to Carolina.
Yep. But again, he saw one of the greatest games in playoff history on Sunday Night Football, and he did see the Packers lose, but would rather see his team play. But again, the legend Jeff Janis having 2 big plays down the stretch, and that one. But
the Vikings had 3 Sunday Night Football and NBC games consecutively to close out the season. Because you remember the playoff game, they played at Green Bay Week 17 for the NFC North title. Then they played a flex game, I believe, in Week 16 against the Giants. Odell Beckham Jr. was suspended from the week prior because of his actions against Josh Norman in Carolina. And the Vikings whooped the Giants' tails. Teddy Bridgewater's coming out party. Shame what happened to him the next training camp preseason.
Yeah, and that's actually funny. That's not the only time that's happened, because the Eagles got flex Week 16 of 2013 against the Bears, where they just had a shellacking of them, and then they played the Cowboys in another flex game on Sunday Night Football and won the division in Dallas, one of 3 times in a row where the Cowboys lost to every single divisional opponent to lose the division, and then the Eagles played the Saints in the wild card round, and the Saints ended up beating them. But that's a different story for a different time. We have so much SNF lore for you guys, and that will be put out on display for every single episode. So let's go to 2016. Who's your pick?
My pick for this, wow. I mean, there's a lot of games that I can pull from here. But the first game that comes to mind for me is the only Sunday night football game to end in a tie.
Ah,
How
yeah.
crazy was that game?
That was insane. That like the animated version of Al that, obviously we don't see it a whole lot anymore, but I mean, he was like, that was incredible.
So that game, obviously for me, but there's so many other ones that I think of. I think of Don Terry Poe throwing a touchdown on Christmas night against the Broncos. I think of Ben McAdoo having to communicate through a walkie-talkie, Giants and the Cowboys Week 14. I think of Seattle beating New England in Foxborough. I mean, there's so many games I could go to.
Yeah.
But I think there's one I haven't mentioned that you're going to bring up.
Well, I was actually going to bring up the Seattle game against New England because that was the rematch of 49. And obviously NBC covered that one. And that was probably we can do a Super Bowl episode another time. Okay. But that was one of the greatest endings to the Super Bowl, one of the most shocking endings, one of the most befuddled endings. And Seattle was never, they have not truly recovered from that moment of potentially going back to back, but they got their get back to an extent. The final play of the game, going into the end zone, Tom Brady throws the fade to Gronk. Cam Chancellor's there. A lot of contact. No call was made. But again, as you know, football's a contact sport. Seattle gets the dub.
Yeah. And I remember, I forget which outlet, might have been CBS Sports, had Seattle as number one in their power rankings after that game, because then they shellacked the Eagles the next week on a 425 CBS game. So that was a really big win for Seattle at the time, but it was the last time New England lost that season, if you remember, because they never lost again. Don't tell an Atlanta Falcons fan about that.
And the only time Tom Brady lost that year.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I mean,
because he was suspended the first 4 games. It's another Sunday night game, Chase. Week 1, they go to Arizona. Arizona. How about that for a change? Usually they go to like Dallas or Los Angeles or Chicago or Green Bay. No, they went to Arizona. The Cardinals still had a lot of core from that 2015 team that was really good, as we mentioned. Jimmy Garoppolo starts for the Patriots, and the Patriots win because Chandler Catanzaro missed a 47-yard field goal wide left.
Yeah.
So there's that.
The SNF lore is crazy. We could have had a Tom versus Carson Palmer matchup on SNF, and they played on Monday Night Football, 9 years before. But again,
I remember that game.
2017. I went with Week 14 Baltimore at Pittsburgh, and that was the rivalry where you're thinking it is smash mouth, and it's still smash mouth football. It's heavy hitting, low scoring games. They said, screw all that. We're trying to score points. And you think about it, my caption for this, Ben goes for half of 1,000 with the Killer Bees. He threw for 506 yards in that game.
It was a come from behind victory too.
Hit the game-winning field goal.
And wasn't this like the third straight game that Chris Boswell hit a game-winning field goal? Because he hit one the week before against the Bengals on Monday Night Football. I was at that game.
Yeah.
And then he hit on Sunday Night Football another one, a 53-yarder against the Packers, because Antonio Brown made a great catch to set it up.
Yeah, and the starting quarterback for the Packers that game, Brett Hundley.
Brent Huntley. That's a name for you.
Yep.
UCLA, the pride of UCLA. Okay. One of the most saddest developments of the 2017 season. I don't mean to make this a sad note, but when J.J. Watt went down Week 5 against the Chiefs, after all he did for the city of Houston, how did that not just pierce at your heartstrings?
Mm-hmm.
That was just so devastating to see.
It definitely was. It was a great game too. It was just so unfortunate that
what? It was a great game.
It was.
People forget how that was a high-scoring game. Deshaun Watson and the Texans were coming along offensively.
Rookie Deshaun Watson, that was.
Yes, back when he was a much more likable player.
That's very true. But yeah, it was Deshaun Watson, the likable version, versus Alex Smith. I mean,
yeah, Mahomes on the bench. That was his rookie. That was his first season.
Yeah. I mean, that was a great game. That was a combined, I think, 76 points, 42-34.
Yeah.
Is that your game, or do you have one?
That is going to be my game, actually.
And that's a good one. It's another forgotten SNF game, but it's so good. And then
it is.
We pushed to 2018.
There's a lot you can choose from this year.
There's so many, and I'm going to pick the most obvious one. It's the Mahomes and Brady pilot episode.
Yep, you have to.
You got to. I think we can agree on that. But again, we have different mind tracks, so I could see where this could go. But the pilot episode, I'm not going to say this was a torch passing, because Brady did end up beating Mahomes later on in the AFC Championship as well, and won another Super Bowl, and then he beat him in the Super Bowl again, and everything else. But yeah, the first time that those two met on the field and the teams put up a combined 83 points. I can't really pick another one at the moment.
So I hope we get this matchup on Sunday Night Football this year, because the last two times they've played on Sunday Night Football, the games have been ridiculous in terms of high scoring and in terms of dramatic endings. Chargers Steelers, Week 13 of 2018. Are you ready for how this game ended? The Chargers won the game 33-30. Pittsburgh was in a slump at the time.
Yep.
So this game ends. Here's how it ends. So Michael Badgley from 39 yards misses. Bud Dupree's offsides.
Yep.
Redo from the 16-yard line, so it's now 34 yards. Michael Badgley gets blocked by Artie Burns. Penalty on Artie Burns for being offsides. Third time's a try, 29 yards, Chargers win. Talk about a dramatic ending.
And the Steelers were up, I believe, 23-7 at one point in this game.
Let me check that.
I think it was 23-7.
Oh my God, they were. Wow. So they were outscored 26-7 in the second half.
I had a friend that was at that game, was a Steelers fan, and hopefully I hope he had a great time. But then again, I'm glad
it was a 57-degree night in early December in Pittsburgh. So the Chargers, comfortable conditions for them. The Steelers that year went 9-7-1, missed the playoffs, and there were so many games that they could have won, should have won, did not, and they missed the playoffs, and that team was really good.
The week before, they lost to Denver when Ben Roethlisberger threw an interception. I mean, that was
in the end zone by defensive tackle Shelby Harris. And then the next week they lost because Chris Boswell slipped on a game-tying field goal at the old Oakland Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
And then they lost to the Saints in Week 16.
Game.
In the game they should have won.
That was crazy. That Saints game was. That was an electric atmosphere too. But again,
the Saints were playing for the number one seed, and it's the Steelers in New Orleans the Sunday before Christmas. I mean, what else do you expect?
The last time they played each other in New Orleans was 2010 on Sunday Night Football on Halloween night. Connections, referencing. How do you know?
I was reading something about, why there wasn't a Sunday Night Football game like one of the weeks, which we know is because of the World Series. Yeah. And I read something that they went to like a city where they knew there wasn't a Major League Baseball team, so they would have a lot of eyeballs in that city watching, and out of respect for the World Series. So they went to New Orleans 2 years in a row during the World Series, and thankfully the Saints blew out whoever they played. Actually, the Saints-Steelers game in 10 was close, but the Saints-Colts in 2011 was anything but close. So
there's your massacre. Oh man!
By the way, did you know that NBC Sunday Night Football has its own place in the Hall of Fame?
Oh, I got a picture with it.
I'm sure you do. Yet you also know that Fred Gaudelli is the only game producer to win the Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award.
Damn.
So. And it's interesting, Chase, because I think maybe some casual football fans, think, they don't think much of producers and directors because you don't see them on camera, and that's fair. But you and me, we know how important they are.
Oh, we know. I mean, it's so important to have a producer that's able to connect with you, be a great communicator, all that stuff. I'm not going to go the job qualities and stuff because, again, I'm not a producer. But, again, it really makes life easier, and they do so much work, and so thankful for those people.
The 1st and 10 technology that you see on every NFL game that you watch, Fred Gaudelli invented that.
Fred's the man. And, and I think the big thing is how we talk about, first and 10, the game of inches, having that line out there. That's actually how I pivot to 2019 because we had San Francisco and Seattle.
What a pivot.
That was a game of inches, and that was a Western cinema classic right there. Okay? Wow. Just think of this. The Niners are wearing their throwback uniforms, okay, in the last game of the season. All right? Unbelievable. Then you've got the Seahawks coming in there, and Marshawn Lynch is back. He's back out of nowhere. In the biggest game of the season, the winner gets the 1, the loser falls down to the 5. If you're Seattle, you don't want to have your division rival walk into your trap and take over your trap and win the division on your home field. Game was amazing. Game was beautiful. It gets down to the wire. Russell Wilson throws a pass. It's caught. But guess what? Dre Greenlaw says, not today. Got to get the measurements and note cards out. Gene Steratore probably wasn't even the ref for that game. But guess what? Game of inches. Niners win, and they get the 1 seed.
I'm gonna laugh hysterically if it was Gene Steratore who ref.
I don't know what I'm gonna do if that's the case.
I'm gonna guess it was Cheffers, which still would be.
It's a good guess.
Okay, I need because this is one of my favorites. When we do our top 20 Sunday night games, this is making the list. I mean, this is making the list.
It was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable game because, when you get your last game of the season and you flex that in there, you're hoping as a producer, as somebody just having factors of scheduling that game, this has got to be the game. You want it to be down to the wire, everything else. You couldn't ask for much more of that one. You really couldn't.
This was 49ers Seahawks at the peak of their rivalries, one of the most underrated rivalries of the Sunday Night Football on NBC era and of this generation. That game in 2019 was 7 weeks after they played a Monday night game in San Francisco. It was the Niners' first loss of the season, one of the craziest games you'll ever see. Greenlaw, by the way, had an interception in that game that nearly won the Niners the game, except Chase McLaughlin then shanked a field goal wide left. But what I remember about the 49ers Seahawks game in week 17 was this was the last year you had 6 teams from each conference make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it was a huge deal. But the Seahawks would not have gotten a bye had they won the game. They would have been the 3 seed because the Packers and Saints both had 13 wins.
That's right. They did have that tiebreaker.
So there was so much at stake in the playoff picture, not just the game itself. And then you kept watching the Seahawks and 49ers that season, and as they kept winning, you said to yourself, that week 17 game is going to be for everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it was weeks in the making, and then the game lives up to the hype. By the way, the referee from that game, he's a good one. It's a great throwback name, Tony Correnti.
Tony Correnti. Yep.
Refed 1 Super Bowl.
Wow.
Do you remember which Super Bowl it was? It's okay if you don't.
I want to say Super Bowl 50.
It was not Super Bowl 50. That was Cleve Lakeman. That's the only one he's refed.
That's impressive that you know that. That is really impressive.
Correnti refed Super Bowl 41. Which was
Detroit.
Peyton Manning's and the Peyton Manning.
Detroit was 40. My fault. 41. Peyton's.
Yes. I can name every Super Bowl ref going back to 38.
Oh my gosh. We're going to give a whole dedicated segment to that on an upcoming episode because that is insane. That's crazy.
Every Super Bowl ref going back to 38.
That's wild. All right.
37. I actually might be able to go back to 36, but I don't know 37 without looking. So
this is insane. This is crazy. Okay. Who is your 2019 game this, or do you have another one in mind?
It is this. I figured as much. What other game is there for me to pick? It's this game.
I don't know.
And look, there were a lot of good Sunday night games. There was a great Eagles-Falcons game in week 2. Julio Jones 4th and 3. That touchdown. I thought Atlanta was going to take off after that game. They didn't. The Colts upset the Chiefs.
Yeah, that was unexpected. Yeah. The Packers and the Chiefs played in week 8.
Yes, Matt Moore gave everything he had that game.
He did, and it was a really good one. And then I wouldn't say necessarily the greatest of them, but there were two games involving the Patriots, and it was huge. It was, and I'm going to say in a second, Baltimore taking on New England for the first time with Lamar Jackson, and the Ravens just, I mean, they ran around like it was a NASCAR event. I mean, they were just tires going. Yep. Offense was not stopping at all. And we were questioning, like, the Patriots, are they that? But then when the Patriots went down to Houston and they lost to the Texans, that's where everybody was like, okay, this is not the same team. Like, these guys aren't the same. This is a little different Patriots team. And we saw how the end played in the wild card, and then Tom goes to Tampa and wins a bowl.
Yes. That Patriots-Ravens game, I remember Colin Cowherd tweeted after Lamar's first touchdown. He said, I haven't seen New England's defense look this discombobulated in forever. That told you the Ravens were making a statement.
Oh, yeah. They were like that. It's crazy they didn't win a playoff game. But
by the way, yeah. I mean,
that's for them to figure out. But
I could spend a whole segment analyzing that box score of their playoff game against Tennessee and tell you that it was not on Lamar Jackson that they lost that game.
And Ian Eagle was on the call. But hey.
He was on the call for that game.
Yeah.
By the way, there was a Steelers-Chargers game in Week 6 where it was played in L.A., but it was essentially a Steelers home game, if you remember that game. Oh, my God.
Devlin Duck Hodges was the starter. Oh.
The other Sunday night games that you can pull from this. Here's a funny story for you. You know Elliot Rearing, our friend from Chatterbox.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So Green Bay and San Francisco played a Week 12 Sunday night game. The Niners crushed them.
Killed them.
I mean, it wasn't even close.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay. And Elliot, I used to do a podcast with him and Zach Freeze. I don't know if you've met Zach. He was on our staff when I was sports director. Zach and Elliot were my right-hand men, essentially.
Yeah.
So we used to host a show on Mondays. We started as a Bengals show, but the Bengals were so bad that year that we basically made an NFL show. So Elliot, the night of the 49ers-Packers game, wrote me and said, yeah, I'm very wrong about the 49ers. I will be writing a poem and singing a Journey song for you on the show the next day. It was a poem about Jimmy Garoppolo, who was sensational that night, as was George Kittle.
Yeah.
And the Niners' defense against Aaron Rodgers made him look like Brent Hundley.
Well, that's a way to put it. I mean,
nicely.
There's so many references from the 2019 season.
No offense to Brent Hundley. Well, it was the 100th season.
That is true.
By the way, there was a Chiefs-Bears game in Week 16 in Chicago. Did you know that's the last Sunday night football game that's been played in Chicago?
We'll see how it plays out this year. But again, that lost me my fantasy championship to my dad. So I remember.
You what? Oh, well.
I
lost because I started Jameis Winston and didn't put Daniel Jones in, and we all know what happened in that game. So consider that the last Sunday night game in Chicago. Consider that a tease for the next show where we unveil our official mock schedules.
Oh, here we go. But you know what? Let's go to 2020 because
this was the pandemic season.
It was. But you know what? I feel like with I don't know if it has any correlation to this at all, but again, for road teams, it probably does. But when there were no fans in the stands, I feel like we saw some of the most ridiculous, best football being played, just like the NBA bubble. But what I'll say is this. There were a lot of great 2020 games that were out there on SNF. And there were, like, the first 5 weeks, you could even say, there were some great ones. I mean, you look at Cowboys-Rams. You look at Patriots-Seahawks. Packers-Saints was fantastic, and Mike Tirico took over that one because it was a non-West Coast game, and Al was trying to stay on the West Coast. And then, Eagles and the Niners, and, and then you've got Vikings Seahawks, which was going on during the NBA Finals. That's not going to happen ever again. But the game that I go to in this scenario, the Chiefs press their luck, gamble in Vegas, and win.
Yep.
Inside the final minute of the game, the Chiefs won 35-31 on November 22nd, 2020, a day which numbed all of us Bengals fans when Joe Burrow got hurt.
Don't even bring it up, Chase.
I know. I shouldn't have, but you know what? We moved forward because Travis Kelce caught a 22-yard touchdown pass from Patrick Mahomes with 28 seconds left. The person who scored the go-ahead touchdown for the Raiders before the Chiefs came down to score was another tight end named Jason Witten.
Are you? Wow.
How insane is that?
That's like the two worlds of Sunday Night Football colliding with the Chiefs and the Raiders. I go to DK Metcalf's chase down at Buda Baker week 7.
Yeah.
And the
Fair.
Cardinals won that game, and that was Kyler's coming out party.
It was. And not many weeks later, the Hail Mary happened. And
yes. And I thought the Cardinals were going to be good after that. They ended up going from 6-3 to 8-8 and missing the playoffs on the last week of the season. And then the Bears got in and missed Trubisky, and we got to see him play a playoff game again.
He won an MVP, but MVP that I.
By the way, how did I not mention this? In 2018, what is it about wild card playoff games that come or Sunday Night Football games on NBC that come down to doinks or double doinks or missed field goals in the wild card round?
I don't know.
Cody Parkey would like to have a word about that.
The most famous double doink of them all in the Windy City. I don't think there was much wind involved in that one. I think it was just the physics and the fact that there were
physics and bad luck
games. Yeah, and Chicago Bears football. But off that, who's your 2020 game?
2020?
Yes.
2020. My game is Seattle, Arizona, because of.
So you did say Seattle, Arizona.
Here's the thing about that: like you had two games, two interconference matchups at the end of that season. It was Browns Giants that was flexed, so the rare that you saw that. And then Titans-Packers. Talk about a matchup that you don't normally see on the primetime stage, especially Sunday Night Football. Yeah. But it was like snowing. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams were just throwing the ball like they were playing catch in the backyard. I mean, yeah. I mean, just a definitely very interesting season. It set the stage for the dramatics of 2021. Which
it did. And that was a great pivot, don't get me wrong. But when that Seattle and Arizona game got flexed, it wasn't for, it was, some health stuff that was going on because Tampa and Las Vegas were going to play a Sunday Night Football game that week.
I would have loved to see it. Brady's first game in Vegas. Yes.
John Gruden coaching against the Bucs, Brady's first game in Vegas. Now he's a part owner of them. And yeah. So it's
what a pivot and connections and references and futuristics and this is just what we do. By the way, just wait till the season. I don't want to tease anything yet because we haven't talked about this yet. But are you thinking we're doing something big when the schedule comes out? And it's hard to believe it's right around the corner, Chase.
I think we've got the same idea. And also one more thing: Seattle played 3 Sunday Night Football games in the first 7 weeks of 2020. Let's go to 2021.
That's amazing to think about. 2 of them were at home too.
Yes, they were thrillers. Now, 2021. I think we might agree on this one.
Might?
Yeah, we should.
Oh, well, I've told you my story from this game.
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk about where you were the night of January 9th, 2022?
In my hot tub with my phone out watching this game. And yeah. Oh, I remember. I
was in a hotel room at the Lakeside Lodge in Clemson, South Carolina. I fell asleep in the fourth quarter. And I woke up for the dramatics of that game. You want to talk about going into the game, the scenarios, and then as it was playing out, and then the game can end in a tie, but Brandon Staley's like, nah, we're gonna. I don't know what he's trying to do. Yeah, exactly. So. Yeah, like you had 3 fan bases who cared about that game. And quite frankly, Bengals fans cared about that game because we ended up – I remember when the game ended, I said, this is perfect for the Bengals. You're going to get a Raiders team that's exhausted. You're going to get a team that has to come all the way to Cincinnati, play the first game of Super Wildcard Weekend. It was perfect.
Yep.
That whole game was just – Chargers, Raiders – because one team isn't very good, both teams aren't very good. But when they get on the primetime stage, it was their second time playing on primetime that season. They played a Monday night game back in week 4. That whole game was just so ridiculously crazy. It was here's a Sunday Night Football reference. We would be remiss and we would be doing a miscarriage of justice if we didn't mention this, Chase. It was the first Raiders home game after John Madden had passed away.
Yeah.
And you had Virginia Madden, his wife, and their family lighting the torch. Oh my gosh, if that didn't put something in you.
100%.
My gosh.
my tagline for this: what happened in Vegas certainly did not stay. That was the Steelers. That was the Steelers' most important game they never played in.
Yeah.
Let that stay. And then another thing, that is actually the second time that the Chargers and the Raiders played on Sunday Night Football. But that was the first time they played on NBC.
Wait. Second time playing on Sunday Night Football, but first time on NBC.
We go back to Week 5, 2013. The game between the Chargers and Raiders got moved. It got moved past the Sunday Night Football game that was on Week 5, 2013. And I forget why it got moved, but the game was aired at 11:30 p.m. Eastern on NFL Network.
My only guess is because the A's were in the playoffs that year.
I think that's what it was.
Was this game in Oakland or was it in
Oakland?
It was in Oakland. So that's my only guess. Because
October 6th.
You want to know why? Because the Niners had a home game that night at Old Candlestick Park against the Texans. Yep. And they did a whole feature on Football Night in America of the city of Houston having pick six burger options because Matt Schaub kept throwing pick six. And lo and behold, in the first quarter, he throws a pick six.
Those burger places were really making their money. And
called that game on NFL Network. That's who I want to know.
Was it Brent Musburger maybe? I don't know.
Brad Musburger on NFL Network, who, by the way, then used to be the Raiders play-by-play announcer when they moved to Vegas.
Excuse me, Brad Nessler. Probably Brad Nessler if I had
Love me some Brad Nessler.
Yeah, I don't know why I got those two confused on there. Both two legends, but
I do not at all remember the Raiders. And you know what? Now it's coming to my mind that I'm remembering that they started, 11:35 p.m. Eastern time. The Chargers won 27-17. I mean, that is a historic reference. If I have not heard any myself.
Very random to say, but we'll move to 2022 since we both agreed on the 2021 one. We've agreed on a couple of these, and it's like, okay. Like,
again, if you want to snap your playoff drought, just play on NBC.
Exactly. Just ask the team from up north. But we look at it, and we'll stay up north actually for this one. 2022. I'm actually going to go week 18, believe it or not, because Detroit did not have to really play for anything. They got knocked out of the playoffs like 20 minutes before they took the field against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers had everything to lose. They had everything to gain and everything to lose after they came from the cellars of 4-8. They lost to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday Night Football back in, I believe that was week 12. Yep. And then they went on a run and they got hot. And then you go on ahead and you look, Aaron Rodgers, is this his last game at Lambeau? It turned out to be his last game at Lambeau, which made for a very cold goodbye as the Lions were able to get the win 20-16. And Aaron Rodgers walked out of there after throwing picks to Kirby Joseph, and the Lions were celebrating like they won the playoffs. But guess what? They carried that momentum over to the next season and the following after that. You saw just the Lions, a team that Aaron Rodgers looked like, he literally had a bat in his hand and just started beating the Lions for his entire career. The Lions stands up, has its claws, and says, you know what? We're a big cat. And you're done, Aaron Rodgers. Go to New York. And they did.
This is the beauty of like when you win a game where you have nothing to play for, but you do, because if you win, you have a winning season, which no one expected after the Lions were 1-6 to start 2022. And people were like, I mean, that offseason, the Lions had as much hype as I've ever seen any team have.
And they lived to it. And
yeah, they lived to it. Somehow I think we're going to pivot to that coming up here. But for me, when I think of 2022, first off, Mike Tirico, this was his first season as the primary Sunday Night Football play-by-play announcer. But for me, I think of the Hubbard Yard Dash.
And again, Alex, I am like, I've been sticking regular season, but man, oh man, you could not get a better call than the Hubbard Yard Dash on Sunday Night Football in Cincinnati.
Yeah, it's one of those where you remember. It's one of those that you even hear the call as you're celebrating live. It's that good. And if it's that good, that tells you how good Mike Tirico is. And I can pull, I mean, like that whole season, you had flex games. It's seemingly like every week at the end of the season. Steelers Ravens was flexed in. It was supposed to be, I think, like Rams Chargers or something in week 17. Week 16, it was a Sunday night game on Christmas between Tampa and Arizona. Week 15, it was the Giants and the Commanders, even though I thought it should have been Bengals, Buccaneers. But then I realized it was the 4:25 game on CBS. I was at that game, by the way. Week 14, it was Dolphins Chargers, where Tyreek Hill he picked up a fumble and literally ran around the entire team.
Like a little kid that stole candy.
I've never seen someone just accelerate that quickly until Jahmyr Gibbs. But first off, I didn't mention this from 21, but you know how at the time it was Al and Chris, but Mike and Chris now, you know how they'll like preview the upcoming Sunday night game at the end of the game they're doing. Yeah. So in 21, and they had the in weeks 2 through 4 that year of Sunday Night Football. Now I'm going back a little bit, but they had at the end of the Packers-Niners game, which that was a great game in of itself.
Man.
And the next week we all knew was Brady going home to Foxborough. So they played like a 7-second clip of Carrie Underwood literally singing Brady's going home. And like, if that didn't get you going, they were showing they were showing him holding the trophy. It was,
and the crazy thing about that is how that night when the Niners and Packers played, Aaron Rodgers leads a game-winning drive, and he has, Michelle Tafoya in the post-game report. Aaron Rodgers says, "How can you not be romantic about football?"
Yeah, he does say that. And
then it pulls right into Brady's coming home. And again, how can you not love football, and how can you not love Sunday Night Football?
Games that sell themselves, that Brady going home to Foxborough did. There was a bidding war for which network was going to get that game, but it just made sense to have that game on NBC Sunday Night Football week 4.
Too much sense.
And then in 22, Mahomes and Brady face off against each other for maybe the last time, and it was. But at the end, for the promo for that game, they showed I forget the name of the song, but the lyrics go, "Oh man, look at my life, I'm a lot like you," and they show Mahomes and Brady, and like Mahomes hoisting his first trophy and Brady hoisting his first from 01. It's like, oh my gosh, we're seeing two generations collide here.
Yeah, that was
enjoy this.
Such a really just abnormal game, abnormal start to say. But then you had Mahomes throw the absolutely ridiculous touchdown to Clyde Edwards-Helaire in that one. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, by the way, quick side note. So you mentioned the Chargers-Raiders game. So the game, you're going to crack up at this. Ian Eagle called that game. I'm waiting for your
Fouts with him. Fouts, yeah. I assume. Yep. Okay. So
and the reason why it was because it was a special edition of Thursday Night Football's extended time was required to convert the field back from its baseball configuration.
Okay.
Which I believe
is that the network moving. I like that. Networks on the fly, man. How wild is that?
I'll tell you what. Okay, 2023.
All right. What are you looking at for 23?
When the Lions became no longer laughingstocks.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't want anybody to tell me, oh, Travis Kelce didn't play in that game. Just stop it. If you think that, just stop it. Because the Lions were the better team that night, and they showed it. Jared Goff was absolutely fantastic. Amon-Ra St. Brown was great. You saw the running back combination of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You saw Sam Laporta, Brian Branch at a pick 6 rookie in his first game. The Lions became for real that night. You go into Kansas City and you win, and Detroit took over that stadium, and you knew they were for real. And that season, they just kept getting better and better and better. There's some other games, too, the Lions played on NBC that I think are worth mentioning. Chase, would you agree with that?
I think I would agree with that. Playoff sense.
But what's your game? Unless those are your games.
Well, again, like I said, I usually stay away from the playoffs on these lists, but again, they're so great, But the game that I was most excited to see before the night of I'm not going to say that. Before the Bills and Jets played on Monday Night Football, the game I was most excited to see on October the 1st was Chiefs-Jets.
Absolutely.
I was so excited because you have the uniform schedule come out as well. on top of seeing Mahomes versus Rodgers for the first time. They've still never played. But you look at it, it was going to be the Chiefs coming in with their red on white versus the Jets in their throwback. Do you know how beautiful of a picture that would be at MetLife?
Yeah, it ended up being. Now that you say that, I see what you're saying.
And it actually turned out to be a very good game. That Zach Wilson played. He played pretty good, like in that game. But it was just it was weird because Mahomes rises in the dark night of Gotham and gets himself a win. I mean, again, there were a lot of very questionable calls in that one, but something about it felt refreshing watching the Chiefs play the Jets on SNL. Something felt refreshing about it. Just because of the hype that the Jets had and Sauce Gardner and, Mahomes wasn't really trying to test him and everything else. Isaiah Pacheco running like he's, running on lava for a touchdown that was over 50 yards. I mean, there was so much that went into that. And Zach Wilson starting off the game very well. It was a very tight game. But, there was something about that just kind of resonates in my mind. And I enjoyed that game, even though the Chiefs ended up winning.
I enjoyed the game because the Jets should have won that game.
They definitely should have won. They
should have won that game. That's crazy. And the crazy thing is the Chiefs jump out to like a 17-0 lead. You're saying, oh, this is going to get ugly as hell.
Yeah.
I mean, it was going to get ridiculous. And then the Jets, they clawed their way back into it. Heck, CJ Uzomah made a big play in that game. I think he had a touchdown, if I remember correctly. For the Jets. So when the schedule came out, like that game wrote itself. Week 4, it gives it just enough time for it to build up with Aaron Rodgers, and then, well, we know what happened from there. But I also think about the playoff games in Detroit.
Oh, dude! I mean, yeah. I mean,
like as soon as Rams Lions we knew was going to be a playoff game, we said that's the Sunday night game.
Easily.
And here's the thing too, Mike Tirico being from Michigan, I think added a little something to it.
Oh, it did.
Like those atmospheres to watch those games on TV, the night game was unreal. The afternoon game was fun against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and just think about what NBC has had in the playoffs in the Sunday night window the last 3 years on Wildcard Weekend. Hubbard Yard Dash, Lions break the drought, Commanders doink field goal, they break their drought.
All right, 2024.
Tough
and the
one.
options that we have here
They're crazy.
Are from opening kickoff night.
They're ridiculous. And I would be remiss if I did not pick a Bengals game. And this is just my line that the Bengals are cursed. You're going to tell me that we're going to play the Chargers, all right? And that game gets flexed. I thought it should have been an SNF game from the start, but again, they moved it to it. You had the Bills and the Chiefs game, all right? And I'm just like, okay, let me just preface. This is not the best game on the schedule. This is the game where I think my social battery went from alive to dead to alive to dead twice a piece in the same game. That never happens. So the Chargers just jump out to that ridiculous lead on the Bengals at one point, 27-6. And then the Bengals just wipe that away effortlessly. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, the trio, wipe it out.
Chase Brown had a big catch and run in that game.
He did. Chase Brown was huge. And the thing that I saw from Joe Burrow that night, especially in the comeback, that was a different Burrow. I know we kept saying it a lot this year because, like, again, threw for over 40 touchdowns and everything else off the injury. But that was a different Joe Burrow. There was a determination that he had that the season was pretty much on the line for the Bengals that night at 4-6. They win that game, they make the playoffs, and they're a 6 seed at the worst case scenario. The Chargers, who knows what happens? Who knows what happens to Denver? All of that stuff. That was the Bengals season that night. And that's the game I want back the most from the 2024 regular season was that Chargers game because there were multiple opportunities the Bengals could have won. Evan McPherson missing 2 field goals in the last 7 minutes. I don't want to bring all that stuff back up. But again, I just think it was 2 teams that were so used to blowing games, and it was kind of like a hold my beer. Oh, wait, you hold my beer. Oh, wait, you hold my beer. Maybe you hold my beer. Okay. And then the Chargers end up winning.
The crazy thing is it was played like 18 years to the almost 18 years. Like, so I told you the story of my 8th birthday. We played the Chargers.
Yeah.
And, well, my birthday was the Tuesday before this past season. We played the Chargers. So naturally, it's going to be deja vu, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Okay. By the way, to watch Joe Burrow make plays with his legs, and that game, if you win, you go into the bye, you feel really good. I think they end up beating the Steelers because the defense made some plays in that comeback too. I mean, there was a fumble that I think did Logan Wilson force it or Geno Stone something? I have to go back and look. Maybe Josh Newton was involved in the play. But anyway, excuse me. If the Bengals, let me ask you this question. If the Bengals had made the playoffs and let's say they play the Ravens for a 3rd time, do you think they beat them?
If the Bengals play the Ravens for a 3rd time, I would take the Bengals.
Interesting. I mean, my God.
The Ravens are playing great. But I think the Bengals would have been there to make things happen. They weren't just there to make a playoff appearance.
How different the playoffs would have been if the Bengals had won that game against the Chargers or any of the 2 games against the Ravens. That's how crazy it is. And again, excuse me, even as the Bengals front office is being ripped to shreds on national television and as they're being criticized for not making enough moves, maybe this offseason is about, retaining your best players. They give you the best chance to win. There is a case to be made about that, but that's a story for another day. My story about the Bengals-Chargers game this past year, this is not my game, by the way.
Okay, I figured.
So I was in Florida for this game. I was in St. Petersburg. And so we were staying in a hotel because my sister just moved in. My mother and I, my dog came with us. We went down to help her get settled in. She ran a half marathon the morning of the game. So we were having mimosas that morning, watching football at the bar all day. Good times, right? And literally waiting all day for Sunday night.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, okay, the Bengals are going to turn this around. They're going to go to L.A. They're going to, reverse what happened to the last time they played at SoFi. They're going to, beat the Chargers. They're going to gain momentum. They're going to go into their bye. We're going to feel pretty good about ourselves. I mean to tell you, the amount of strength it took me to get up. I was laying on one of the beds in the hotel room watching the game. The amount of strength it took me to get off that bed just to go take a shower after that game is impressive in of itself.
Dude, it was.
And as I did that, I said to myself, how does Joe Burrow walk back to the locker room after the Bengals lose yet another game where he goes for 350, 3 touchdowns, and they lose?
I don't know.
In the worst possible fashion.
I have no idea how that even occurs. I have no clue.
By the way, the uniform matchup was pretty good that game.
Oh, beautiful. That might be one of the best SNF uniform matchups of all time, and that's a different conversation for a different day. It was beautiful.
Yeah. My game, though, is week 1 Sunday Night Football, Rams-Lions. Yep. I mean, look, we knew that it was going to be a great game. It turned out to be even better. It felt like a playoff game. And then here's the crazy thing. The Lions, when they get the ball first in overtime, they didn't throw the ball down the field. They said, okay, we're going to go right at you with our running game. And they did.
Yeah.
And another thing I think about too is, Chase, doesn't it feel like to you that Jaden Daniels and the Commanders kind of hold a special place for both of us because we started this podcast the day after the Week 17 Sunday Night Football game?
And that's why I was thinking about it right there as the game that I really enjoyed. I know obviously the Bengals one, I wanted to throw them on there, and it was a great game against the Chargers. But yeah, I mean, it really is a special place in our heart because of being that day after. And another thing with the Bengals Chargers, 2 days later, we're at NKU, and we're going back and forth about SNF games left and right, all that stuff. And then the podcast comes into fruition a month later.
This podcast was born on Christmas. I mean, some things just make sense.
I think they do. They really do.
By the way,
yeah.
speaking of that Falcons-Commanders game, the Commanders won in overtime. They were the only team to possess the ball in that overtime. Did you happen to see, Jace, there was a summit that came out of the owners' meetings this weekend down in West Palm Beach that now both teams in the regular season can possess the ball in overtime.
Mm-hmm. I
Great.
saw.
But you know what else needs to be now? They need to ban the possibility of games being able to end in a tie.
Yes, they do. Because you know what? If they wanted to have the ability of a game to end in a tie, I don't like that either. I really don't. If they had both teams getting the ball, they should have moved the overtime back to 15 minutes.
Exactly. Why do they move it to 10?
Exactly. Why would you give a team, both teams, opportunities, but less time? You're basically catering for more ties to possibly happen.
I think
if a team scores a touchdown.
So you're saying, like, let's say the first team gets the ball, they take 10 minutes, they score. Did they go to a second overtime then so the other team can possess the ball?
Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean,
college football overtime's the best.
Yeah, the easiest thing would be, honestly, change it to, the college football rules and overtime. But I'd even say, you know what, if they wanted to, obviously college, you're starting at 25 and everything else. If they wanted to, like, kind of spice it up a little bit, what if you start at the opposing team's 30, 1st and 15? Make it a little extra down in distance. You only get 2 first downs. It's a first down and it's goal to goal from the 15.
I like that.
Make it interesting. And then when you get to the third overtime is 2-point conversions. That's where the college football aspect comes into play. But change it a little bit when you're coming to change the college rules. Let's move from the 25 back to the 30. You can only get 2 first downs. It's a 1st and 15. Make it a little bit deeper.
See, even in the NHL, games can end in ties after the first overtime in the regular season. But you know how they decided? A shootout. So exactly. that got me thinking, Chase. Here's my idea.
Okay. Yeah.
Excuse me. I love your idea. Excuse me. Imagine this. Week 18, Ravens-Bengals, Sunday Night Football in the jungle, AFC North title on the line. First overtime gets played and we're still tied. So how are we going to settle this? How about a field goal shootout between Justin Tucker and Evan McPherson? 5 field goals each from 50 yards out until there's a winner.
Wow.
You ever heard the phrase, the game of football comes down to the kicker? Well, that will be put to the ultimate test.
It definitely would be. And oh, boy. Well, I'm not going to talk about how the kickers had their performances this year, but if we had both of them at their best, then that game might never end. That game might never end.
50 yards out at some point, someone's going to get penetration and block it.
Someone's going to. So, I mean, I like that idea too. But again, they needed to change the amount of time and give it, to 15 at least. But they need to get rid of ties but ties make it interesting. But you know what?
No one sees ties. The game.
Exactly.
Thank you, Herm Edwards. Okay.
What are we? We're toward the end of the show. So we're looking at,
Final 4.
We are. All ones in San Antonio. That's not the first time. Not the first time.
Not the first time. By the way, there was a graphic that Ian Eagle and the crew showed on Sunday during the Elite Eight. The last time the Final 4 had all number 1 seats was in San Antonio in 2008, and they were played on 17 years to the date that this Final 4 is going to be played on. How about that?
Well, maybe someone has their Mario Chalmers moment on Monday night. Don't know.
Well, I mean, given that someone on Twitter said that Walter Clayton Jr. went full on Steph Curry mode in the Final 4 or in the Elite Eight last week, it could be him. By the way, Houston Duke on Saturday night is going to be war. Yeah,
you had those two teams play each other last year. Jamal Shead got hurt. Jamal Shead last year was one of my favorite players in college basketball. Actually, might have been my favorite guard. And then Duke ends up winning, go to the Elite Eight, lose NC State. But again, that Duke Houston game was it was a low scoring game last year in the low 50s.
Could be that way again.
It probably will be. I mean, you're going to have defense, but don't get it twisted. These guys can score. Both teams
can. Yeah, they can. All right. On next week's show, I got a topic about the 2005 Bengals.
Ooh, okay. Delta O'Neal.
Plus maybe some mock schedules.
Love it.
Chase, you want to close us out?
Well, with that being said, that's Alex Frank, and you can find him at Frankie_Natty on Twitter. And I'm Chase Younts. You can find me at Younts32. Actually, no, excuse me, Younts Chase 32. The numbers mixed up. But
There's significance with the number 32.
Yeah, there you go.
Is there a significance with that number? Because that's a good, that's a big number.
That's what I wore when I played football when I was younger. My favorite running back then was Jim Brown. And you know what? If we want to think NFL, there's 32 teams. Love it. All right. Alex.
It's also UC alum Sandy Koufax's number. It's also Magic Johnson's number.
Okay. I will stop at the Magic Johnson thing right there. All right.
Bling, bling.
Okay. There we go. Alex Frank, Chase Younts. We'll see you.